Hello, PAL team. This is the 6th video that I'm putting together for you, and this one focuses specifically on how each section of the workbook, rather, each section of the handbook is prepared for you to be basically a map and a to-do list and a checklist for you to get through the task with as much excellence and completeness as you can. There's not a lot that they leave out. In fact, I don't think there's anything that they leave out. So I want to get right to it. This is going to be a pretty detailed video. I'm going to try to make it as short and succinct as possible, but it is a lot of detail, and it kind of has to be because it covers everything in the workbook. I will not do this for tasks 2, 3, and 4. If you learn it in task 1, I can give you quick guides through 2, 3, and 4, but the format is the same as you'll see here. Let's see. So this is how every single PAL task is detailed in the handbook. They each start with a statement of focus. For example, the first one is leadership through a vision for high student achievement. They start off with a series of questions. What do school leaders need to think about the focus statement? What do you need to do to complete this task? What questions do you need to consider to complete this task? Then they get into the components of the task, the investigative portion, the preparation portion, the part where you're going to act, and then the part where you're going to assess. They detail for you every artifact you need, every document you need to produce, and every piece of commentary you need to write. Then they list them exhaustively so that you don't miss one. They then go through the evidence charts and submission readiness. They even provide you with rubrics for how you're going to be assessed. So it's very, very complete, exhaustively complete, and it can be, even looking at this, I'm not going for my PAL certification, and it's overwhelming until I realized that this is a step-by-step to-do list and checklist for how to do this stuff. And it's super useful. So maybe you'll agree as you look at it. Let's get right to the portion of the workbook that I want to bring your attention to. Okay, this starts on page 11. In the introductory portion for the handbook, I went through page 10. So this is picking up right where I left off on page 11. All right, here's a statement of focus. Leadership through vision for high student achievement. Here's your key question. What do school leaders need to think about when realizing a vision for student achievement? Okay, I'll let you read through all that, but school culture has 3 components, and it lists them. The professional learning culture, that's teacher-to-teacher relationships, the student culture, teacher-student and student-student relationships, and the culture of family and community engagement. Okay, this is all old hat for you guys because you deal with it every day. This first portion of the task is about analyzing relevant school level student performance and school context and culture data to identify a priority academic area where student learning needs to improve and an underperforming student group specifically needs to improve. So that's the strategies that you're going to be developing, is for that subgroup. They give you different things you can review, the Massachusetts professional standards and indicators for administrative leadership, all this kind of stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with these tools and resources or not. I've clicked over there and it seems worthwhile to look through them. It's also, if it's not useful, it's probably overwhelming, and I would find your own way through. But some of that stuff is actually decent if you haven't been exposed to it before. So I would encourage you to do that. What do you need to complete this task? That's one of the early questions they ask, okay? And then they walk you through it, okay? It's a description of every action you need to take to complete this task. So they're going to describe to you that you access, collect, and analyze 3 to 5 years worth of quantitative student performance data, qualitative data on school culture and student learning, and overall school context information, and on and on. There's like 9 bullets here. You're going to identify a priority academic area. You're going to collect additional quantitative and qualitative information. This is all part of your investigating portion of completing the task. So there's this whole, and every task is like this, there's this whole gathering of information and data portion. Then you're going to do some preparation of it. But before we get to that point, you're going to gather this stuff. There's a recursive cycle where you're going to gather it, and then you're going to do things like you're going to develop a vision and a set of action strategies. The recursive portion is when you go back and you're going to solicit feedback about the need for addressing your student group's performance in the proposed priority area. You're going to also find from your supervisors and colleagues their input on whether what the relevance and feasibility of the proposed plan is. You're going to evaluate the feedback and make appropriate revisions to the plan. And then you're going to summarize and constructively critique the leadership skills and practices that you used or developed in completing this task. So what it is they really put you through the paces of gathering data, coming up with ideas, proposing a plan, getting feedback on that plan, and then evaluating the plan and yourself. It's very thorough and complete. Key questions. What questions do you need to consider to complete the task? It's a description of every question you'll need to ask. Okay, again, it's pretty exhaustive. All right. So components of the task include the first stage, which is investigation. Some of what I was describing before was also investigation, but what the list we just looked at up here, these bullet points here, are what you need to do to complete the entire task. So it's the 4 components that we talked about: investigation, preparation, action, and assessment. So here is investigation. Components of the task, part 1, investigation. All right, it's when you choose your priority academic area. Okay, they describe the sequence of work. It's, again, here's your action list, your to-do list. Select a priority area. Okay, what are the gaps in student learning? Determine which student group has most challenges or needs, and on down this list. Okay, so that's part 1. Then they switch it around and kind of get into a different way of coaching you on what this stuff is. For example, what area of student learning should be a priority for improvement and for which group of students? That's a necessary question. Here's the answer. This is what you're looking for in the data. You want to identify trends and patterns. You want to disaggregate the data to investigate patterns of differences. Okay, this stuff, as dense as it is, these paragraphs here, they're worth reading because they really are guiding. I would not try to sit down and digest these 28 pages of all of task 1 guidance in one sitting. You might, go through it and just familiarize yourself, or maybe this video will do that for you. But then I would go through and read it and just digest it as best you can, because it really is your battle plan for how to get into this stuff. So these are guiding questions as you collect and analyze your data. What is the relationship between the student group's performance for the priority academic area and other student, teacher, and school data? Is there any relationship? It suggests data subsets to review. So student engagement data, teacher quality and engagement data, school culture data. All of this is helpful. A second guiding question is, what is the learning experience for the target student group in the priority academic area? They also suggest, as part of this first component 1, the investigation portion, that you generate a little bit of your own data. So you're going to do some observations, you're going to make some classroom visits, you're going to do some informal interviews and some focus groups or surveys with students, teachers, and other stakeholders. So that's going to be some data that you yourself generate after looking at existing data. Another guiding question here, and then we're on to component 2, prepare. This is where you pivot from gathering data to beginning to evaluate your data. You're going to be evaluating gaps and opportunities for improvement by auditing existing school programs, processes, and practices. You're going to be seeking input from others, and you're going to be investigating possible improvement strategies. They give you recommended preparation steps. They say you should audit school programs and processes and practices, solicit further input, identify what's working well, explore possible improvement strategies. All right. So they give you, for the preparation portion, you have this pile of different kinds of data. They suggest to you how you can begin to sift that out. And they give you guiding questions and direction on how to do that. For example, one example would be the Massachusetts Model System Educator Evaluation Teacher Rubrics. These would be indicators of proficient and exemplary teaching. So when you're asking questions about what kind of teachers are working in your school and does this have an impact on that critical component of the subset population you're looking for, then you can go to something like that to get an indicator of what kind of teachers you have. Okay, so component 3, after gathering data, evaluating it, and digging deeper by generating new data, the next step is to design a strategy. Using the results from component 2, you're going to design and present a plan containing an integrated set of strategies that can be implemented to improve student learning in the priority academic area for the target student group. Okay, the plan should be built around a set of goals and measurable student objectives and a coherent theory of action. So you're going to see this word highlighted, or not highlighted, but it's going to be in there a lot. The plan should, this should, that should. That's going to tell you exactly what you want to be doing. Because when you see that in a document like this, that is how they're going to score you. Anything that there's a should with, you're also going to see that on the rubric, or they're going to be using it in some other way to evaluate your performance. So if it says you should do or there should be, then make sure those parts are in there. So the plan should contain the core elements described in the Massachusetts Focused Planning Guide. There's a link here. You can go to the Massachusetts Focused Planning Guide and look for the core elements and build your plan according to that. It also says you should include avenues to improve student engagement and learning by strengthening one or more of the following. And this is all obvious. Of course, you'd look to strengthening curriculum or instruction or assessment or school culture to improve your outcomes. The plan itself should be written as a compelling evidence-based argument about how the proposed strategies will improve learning for the targeted students in the priority area. It should include sufficient detail about the following in order to garner support from the leadership team and key stakeholders. So this is the list of products, okay? You should have a list of goals and measurable student outcome objectives. You should have a set of action strategies. You should have a theory of action. These are basically, they're putting this together for you. This document that you're going to produce is going to have all these components, and you just have to knock them off one by one. So you do want to engage outside help in terms of soliciting input from leadership, in this case, principal or superintendent, and the leadership team to critically review the draft plan and provide feedback to you. All right. Component 4 is the assessment portion. You're almost done with doing all the work for this task. As a final step, they want you to evaluate the leadership skills and practices you used in this task. This is an important point right here. The leadership evaluation, that is what you're writing about yourself, should not be a recap of the steps you took to complete the task. That's a real important clarifying component right there. It should specifically address your leadership skills and practices related to the following aspects of your task. And here they are. Again, they give you 6 bullets, okay? They don't want to know what you did to collect and analyze your data. They want to look at your leadership skills and practices. So that is the framework that you need to be trying to answer this question from, this assessment question, is always through this lens of leadership skills and practices that you exhibited. So when it comes to collecting and analyzing data, how did you show what leadership skills or practices did you demonstrate in doing that? For example, how did you come to choose your priority academic area? Same thing with engagement of others in the planning process and soliciting input, development of proposed vision, theory of action, set of strategies, et cetera, all of it through that lens. So now you've completed the components of the task, and so you've done the work. What follows, the last 3 bullets that I lined up in that chapter, which, the outline, which I'll go back to. Okay, this is the part we've just covered here, all 4 components. What remains is all this section here, artifacts and commentary, the evidence chart, rubrics. This is where you generate the work. This is where you check the work off these different lists. So here we are back at our handbook. The artifacts, documents, and commentary. This section provides instructions about the materials the school leadership candidate needs to submit for the review process. So what follows is like a grocery list of all the things you need to produce. And much of it you will already have produced in doing the work. Okay, this just helps you organize for submission what you've already done. Basic forms, confidentiality, anonymity, 3 artifacts, documents that support the artifacts, commentary and narrative form. Okay, a really good reminder here, must not include personally identifying information. You should be practicing this from the start when you generate any kind of artifact. You want to make sure that you've blinded it and protected the anonymity of your participants. So it says 3 artifacts here. Right down here breaks down exactly what the artifacts are. So artifact 1, priority area and its context. Much of the artifacts, like I said before, you've already produced in the course of your work. So you've already written up a description of the priority academic area. You've already come up with a compelling rationale based on the data you collected and analyzed for why you selected that academic area. You've even written about what leadership skills you've demonstrated in choosing that. And on and on. Part of the artifacts include this artifact 1, priority area and its content. You've already done the analysis. You've already written a description of the school and community context, the summary of gaps, and then you're going to talk about how input was solicited. So you've done all this work. This just makes sure that you're checking off your list everything that you need. These blue boxes are all important, so I'd pay attention to them, but I won't read them through at this point. Artifact 2, the plan for action strategies. This is the artifact itself. In a memo of up to 4 single-spaced pages or 2,000 words to be written by you to the superintendent or principal, you will present a plan that outlines a set of goals, objectives, and action strategies to improve learning in the priority academic area for the targeted student group. That's the whole body and core of task 1. And that 2,000 word, 4 single page statement is going to include a vision describing how the plan will support and sustain improvement. A compelling evidence-based justification. Here's your outline for the essay right here. That's all it is. It should also include the following components of the plan. You should talk about in that long essay, the goals and measurable student outcome objectives, a set of action strategies, your theory of action, et cetera, et cetera. Some of this you're going to be using, like the theory of action. That's going to show up in a couple of different places. So you'll be well aware of all this by the time you're, not only producing but organizing this information. So artifact 3, the findings, feedback, and recommendations. Here's a separate piece you need to produce. In a report of up to 3 single-spaced pages, 1,500 words, describe how you collected feedback from the school leaders, the leadership team, and other stakeholders, and synthesized and interpreted the feedback. So they want to know just not what you collected, but what you did with it. So here's where we've talked about this a number of times, identifying by role which individuals from the leadership team, staff, and other stakeholders providing feedback on the proposed plan. I'm not going to go through every bullet here, but you know, again, this can seem daunting, but it's really just an outline of what you're going to, of how you're going to write your document. Okay. It then talks about documents by category. I have that kind of disbelief because they cut this every possible way for you to make sure that you've got everything checked and double checked by different layers. Documents that must be submitted are supporting materials used by you and the working groups to complete the task. So these are not your primary documents. Some of these are your secondary documents. These documents provide supporting evidence pertaining to the task work and are necessary to inform scoring. So this is where they want to see all the legwork that you did. So when you do your legwork, remember, much of that you're going to have to save. In addition to the artifact files described above, you must submit the following documents used in the task using a separate file for each of these 5 file categories. Again, much of this you collect as part of the process of completing the task. Here is just where they describe in detail how they want you to organize it. Student demographic and other relevant school context and performance data, school's existing vision, mission, and improvement plan, school and district priorities, data collection forms, et cetera, And then these are the regular forms, surveys or interview questions used to collect feedback, et cetera, Okay. Your commentary, you must submit clearly presented and well-focused written commentary that explains how you accomplished the task. This is the third piece of writing that you need to do. You're going to write a personal commentary of up to 2 single-spaced pages on your own learning and leadership. So this is a reflection document. Again, these chunked out pieces here are really worth reading because they're very descriptive and prescriptive. And that's why I underlined this in red. Avoid simply recapping the steps you took to complete the task and focus on the analysis of your leadership for developing vision of high quality student achievement, right? The commentary should not be a description of all the actions you took to complete the task. So we've already been through this. This is the more information on the commentary about how you exemplified leadership skill in this. And they go into further detail to provide guidance on how to write this piece. Specifically address your leadership skills and practices in response to the following questions. That's going to be really helpful when you sit down to write this. So we've talked about all the artifacts, documents, and commentary that you need to submit to have basically a full portfolio to be scored on for task 1, okay? What they do next is they give you an evidence chart of all required work. So this is basically a detailed checklist of all you have to gather and submit. And it gives information like you should have 1 file for your confidentiality and anonymity form, and it should be in any of these acceptable file types. Now, we've covered this before in previous videos, okay, when I gave a quick introduction to the handbook intro, I believe. So here for task 1 is your evidence chart. Every single thing is listed. The plan for action strategy, priority areas, context, et cetera. It's just exhaustive. I would just go down and check it off. You got it checked in there, check it off as you complete it. Now, an important note about anything you submit. Scorers are not required to read artifacts and commentary that exceed or do not meet the requirements. So don't write 800 or 1,000 words when 1,500 or 2,000 are required. And the reason that, I think that's ridiculous. If you're a great writer, you can say what you need to say in less space. But their argument is that submissions that fall short of the required word length are likely to lack sufficient information and detail. Fair enough. They want to see you coming close to the 1,500 word or whatever the word limit is, right? Here they reference the submission requirements, which when I gave a previous introduction through the website, I talked about what kind of submission requirements they give you the document that can guide your submission requirement verification. You can just kind of check off against that requirement list whether you've met them or not. They also give you information on submission readiness. Another really helpful checklist. Did you appropriately blind your submission from all this information, candidate, school district, staff, etc.? Did you complete and upload the confidentiality and anonymity form? I mean, it's just exhaustive and great and overwhelming, but if you just follow it piece by piece, you're going to do fine with this. Have you proofread all documents? Did you demonstrate feedback collection and use of feedback evidence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I won't talk about every single thing. So here on page 33, how will the evidence of your leadership practice be assessed? In essence, what they're going to now show you in the remaining pages of this section is all of the 3 rubrics and every subsection that details how you're going to be scored. So you can look at it yourself even before you build your documents and say, am I doing this? So it's really a means of assurance that, you know, if you want to be scoring up here, meeting or exceeding the benchmark, you just got to be looking at this and let that guide you in the quality of the kind of products you're creating. So here they are. 1A, investigate and prepare a vision. Rubric 1B, design an integrated plan for strategies to develop and implement improvement in the priority academic area. 1C, assess and analyze feedback from participants. And then we're at task 2. So that was page 11 to 39. And I just think it's incredible the level of guidance they give you. They're really not leaving anything up to doubt. So I will give you quick introductions to tasks 2, 3, and 4 because they are different. But by understanding that this is how they're building the chapters or the handbook guidance, and each of them is the same as I showed you in this document. Each one is built like this. I went through and made sure that, but every single one is built like this. Statement of focus, question, components, the pieces you need, how they're going to, the evidence that you need to compile. You know, so the difference between artifacts and evidence is that this is all the different pieces. This is how they want you to put it together for submission. And then here's how you're going to be scored. So they're all like that, each part of the book. I hope this is really helpful. I know I'm shooting this rough. I'm trying to mix it up so you're not bored to tears. And please be in touch if you have questions or feedback. I'm going to try to finish the last 3 parts of this next week to give you what you need to go forward. And it's always going to be there. Those resources will be posted. You have the links which feed from my Google Drive, but I'll also post them on YouTube eventually so that they're there for people to use. All right, thanks and best of luck. I'll talk to you soon.